Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Democracies, dictatorships, pseudo democracies, they are all marked by elections. And then what are the elections? They are the political version of the statement Vox Populi, Vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. Now, if we look at the things properly, it's always said self government is no substitute for good government, and elections, in fact, are a transition of self government through government by elected representative who or she represents the will of the constituents, the electorate, and puts in the policies which are supposed to be approved by the people who elected. But the reality is not that. People often talk of the elections being an event that makes the policies of a country, and nothing is farther from the truth. At the most, elections are a burlesque, and at worst, they are a tragedy. They range from tragedy to farce to burlesque, the way they are conducted and way the results are there. Once the people are selected, they are kings for the whole world. They're the lords of their own domain. The world constitutes themselves, of course. And there have been cases when elections have shown that 99.9% votes were cast in the favor of one person. We have seen President Putin, President Xi, and others. But then, can you show me a single country, except, of course, exceptions like Switzerland, and I'm saying exception because I'm not sure. We have no first-hand experience. It is so secluded, so secretive that people are not aware what happens. Then the second point is the election about the principles or is it about the personalities? 9 out of 10 times, elections are not about principles. All the manifestos that are presented by the parties or by the persons are eyewash. They are hogwash, as a matter of fact. Till now, the record is that in 90% of the cases, those promises made are not kept. For example, in India, we have seen if the promises had been kept, then India would have been the strongest and the richest country in the world today. But the other way around. Some promises are kept, and then so much of drum beating is there that the people think that all the promises are kept. In Canada, President Clinton made 144 promises before the Prime Minister Clinton, sorry, and kept 20 of them. Paul Martin made 89 promises in his manifesto and kept 2. I think it was Prime Minister Harper only who kept, they presented some 46 and more than 40 were implemented. Some have excelled, done better than what they promised. Prime Minister Trudeau promised the deficit to be few $1 million. Rather, he promised a balanced budget. And then he changed it from a balance to a deficit. But deficit was a couple of $1 billion, and nobody could expect it to go into hundreds of $1 billion. But that's the way he kept. The promises are always of the clean government, corruption-free government, and show me a single instance where 100% record of unblemished, uncorrupt government is there. So they are a negation of the reality. All elections are basically promises made and are meant to be broken. Manifestos have no meaning. So when we say that the people go and vote on the basis of promises, it's wrong. Secondly, people also don't vote because of their self-interest. If the self-interest was a motivating factor, then Trump would not have received 70 million votes. He would have received 170 million votes. He would have received much more, all these votes. The first president after Eisenhower who didn't wage a war, who brought unemployment to zero. But no, the cacophony and the noise created distorts people's minds. And then Biden had very clearly stated that the moment he becomes president, he and his co-host, I'm saying host because she's likely to be more than the first lady. She's likely to be the first gentleman lady, as a matter of fact, the first women president shortly. If the mental faculties of Biden keep on declining the way they are. So they had promised a tax increase and get the people voted for them. And now, after they have cast their vote, most of them are repenting. Look at the Janta experiment in India. The same people who used to worship Mrs. Gandhi voted against her on the specious plea that their rights have been violated. And they brought in a hodgepodge stew of different politically inimical parties. So who can say that they are always intelligent? By and large, they are. I don't deny it. And many times they show a correct approach, as in election of Modi or an election of Trump. But by and large is one thing. When it comes to the crux, they're swayed by the cacophony of noise, the sweet talks of the politicians meaning nothing. And that is why, one of the biggest charges against Trump was that he's arrogant. When I compare Trump with others, yes, he is arrogant. Then I'm reminded of Shakespeare's play Coriolanus, when he says, I cannot bear my shoulder for crows to peck at. A great warrior, a great savior of the country, but he was defeated in the election because he would not kowtow. And not because he disrespected people, but because he didn't want to insult them, he didn't want to cheat them. But the people want to be cheated. They want a fake show of humility. And they forget that the bigger a rascal, the more humble he is. Humility is a sign of a covert rascal. You remember Uriah Heep of David Copperfield? Humble Uriah Heep. That's the reality of the humble people. A person who doesn't have an axe to grind, A person who is honest and knows that he is working as per the promises made, as per his thoughts, as per his characteristics, doesn't need to be unnecessarily humble. Yes, he should listen to others, but that doesn't mean he should not be arrogant. Arrogance comes in, as I always say, when you have got something to be arrogant about. But the people don't want it. So the elections that are there are a compendium of reactive emotions. Reaction to the sense, well, how dares he be more capable than I am? How dares he do something for the country, but I'm still unemployed? And they do not apply their mind. The application of mind, the judicious application of mind is missing. And the elections become a force. In India and in Pakistan, it's worse. Bribery, coercion, force, they are often used. In the backward villages, especially, the landlord is the supreme, and when he says vote for so and so, they'll vote for so and so. The systems that have been set up are so percolated with corruption that the manipulating people are able to take advantage of that and make a mockery of election, which should be almost a sacred duty than the number of voting. 57% people voting, 36% people voting, that doesn't mean anything. Until another vote is minimum 80%, it loses all its meaning. So what? But are the governments doing anything except Australia? No, they don't want to do it because they know that if there's a larger number of people voting, it will be difficult to manipulate a larger number. So have a small number, manipulate them, and come in power. So then all elections representative of the people? No, they are not and they cannot be. They are at best an indicator of the likes and dislikes. Then frauds. I remember way back Pratap Singh Karo was the chief minister of Punjab and one of the most capable, honest, personally, though his family was one of the most corrupt ones. But anyway, one best administrator possibly India had seen at that time. And what happened? At the time of election, he was going to lose. And all of a sudden, the lights went off. Counting was taking place. Immediately, the emergency lights were brought in, the lamps, hurricane lamps were there. And by the time the light was there had been substitution done in the ballot boxes. And he won. And he won by 34 votes. That was something which people cannot comprehend till day. A person who was losing by more than 20,000 votes won by 34 votes only. Thanks to a few minutes blackout. Same happened in USA this time. As I told yesterday in my comments, 100,000 votes change in one place, 230,000 votes change in another place, a million votes change in another place. And all that happened between 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. I gave you the details yesterday in my talk. In India again, there were two premiers, Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad and Sadiq, epitomes of election mangling. I'm purposely calling it mangling. And they would always win, come rain, come shine. So money, fear, favoritism. They make a mockery of elections. Then, as I said, it is not the principles, it's the personal antipathies, the caste, the religion, the ideology. The basic thing people should think is for A, the integrity of the country, not the mundane things. Well, what's going to happen if I'm electing my prime minister or my president? I elect him to defend me, not to defend outsiders. And you know, those so called lofty, noble ideas, human rights, and others, are for other people, not of your own people. Your own people are exploited. You are quiet about that. But you're more concerned with what happens 5,000 kilometers away in the swamps of Africa. Why? You're more concerned with those things. But people are swayed by that. So basically, elections, if they're to be honest, should be if the people are well aware of four things: the integrity of the country, law and order inside, and economic development. And economic development automatically assumes health and infrastructure and everything. Other things should be at a secondary level, but it doesn't happen. We are more concerned that Modi has brought in CAA, that we will not give refugee status to this community, but we'll give a refugee status to this community. So what? You give a refugee status according to your needs. Your pride, even USA has that, but then people are agitated. If Trump bans the immigration or the refugee status of possible terrorist activities, what's wrong with that? But no, mountains are made of molehills, and the elections become a farce. So what I said earlier, elections as they happen are either a tragedy of the exploitation of human emotion, or a burlesque on the large comedy humane, as Balzac would have called it, the human comedy. Shows the depraved, the dirty, the cowardly nature of man. Shows the lack of logic and reason. Shows the force of extraneous factors: caste, color, creed, money. But the real principles which should sway are more often than not missing. If they were there, do you think that Harper would have been defeated? If they were there, do you think that would there be any hope of Rahul coming into power, or Manmohan continuing and winning the second term? No. And when I look at the election, I'm reminded of again of Shakespeare when he said, Lord, what fools these mortals be! Shall we their fond pigeons see? And these pigeons are the foolish mortals we see every time an election takes place. It's a tragedy underlying the burlesque, and I feel pity for the so called deification and glorification of elections. Think about it. Thank you.